call to order here. As we start, if you bow our head, let's go to the Lord. Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing us to be here. We ask that you to help us serve in our positions, Father, to help us lead in the way we can. Help us do right, and help us always remember that you're in charge. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. We're going to go to the reading of the minutes to our next meeting. And then you better get you a bottle of water because you'll have a lot to read by this. Actually, this is just a continuation that we didn't get finished last meeting. So we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Howard Gray.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I'll start with this one. I haven't even had a chance to brief the bill, so it'll be new to him too. What I'm going to present tonight will not be ready to go to council. What we talked about last week, and we talked about it in a couple of different settings, is the agricultural properties that exist. That back, I'm trying to think when RD was there. I know it was in 2000 when I first started seeing it. There was an RD, rural development, which is basically 5 acre and larger tracts. And I'm paraphrasing here, guys. I had to go back and actually pull the code that was there. But you know, basically residential estate tracts that allow farming, animals, stuff like that. Okay, we've had that. Temple's always had that. When we updated the code, 06, 07, you know, we rolled in the old zonings into the new zoning categories. Okay, so RD and R40, I believe, looking at here again one picture, rolled into R1. Okay, and none of us really caught, and it was my mistake, that we created an issue that luckily has not bared itself out. You know, in other words, you know, technically, probably, if I read the letter of the rules in the R1 that is on the street in Temple right now, farm animals are not allowed. Okay, don't know that, but that's my gut feeling, because where the zoning code we came out of, that's probably where it is. So what I want to talk mainly about tonight is reinstituting, it's called, make sure I say this right, an estate residential classification. It's basically what I've looked at. We can call it whatever, we can call it agricultural, whatever. What I looked at was Carrollton and Bremen. And that's, they both call it estate residential. And I'm going to pass out some stuff here, but I want to paraphrase it. Basically, they're 3 acres and larger. And it's basically residence, but it allows the farming, the agricultural, I don't know, farming's a generic term, but I'm going to say livestock, horses, cows, animals. It does appear, the two that I read, appears to limit it to non-commercial. In other words, and so I've got to read, I want to read through and do some research on what does commercial mean. Okay. You know, my thoughts are commercial means I couldn't have a chicken house, because that would be a commercial operation. But if it's personal livestock, I don't know that I couldn't have 100 and I'm selling them here and there. You know, what makes a personal farmer turn commercial? That's the part I don't know, and I can't answer that today, so I know that's going to be some questions. So at the end of the day, what I want to do is have that conversation, pass out some data, so we can start that conversation of how we formulate that classification back into our code, because what we're going to need to do is figure that out from this body, and then also from the mayor and council. Once everybody's comfortable, then we'll have to get it to the city attorney to codify it, whatever they call it, create an ordinance, so it can be instituted and then actually put into the book. And then at that point in time, we'll need to update the map and coordinate with the property owners that I think I know, we're going to go through those tonight, that would actually fall under, right now, grandfathered. I believe they have rights because they're grandfathered, but at least I think we should reach out to them and say, if you want to go back to this, and give them that right. Because one of the concerns that was raised to me, and I had not thought about it this way, but I've seen it before, is if I'm sitting there and I'm in a farming industry, and I'm an R1, and somebody comes and puts a subdivision beside me, 3 or 4 years, they're going to start complaining about my chickens. 5 years, they're going to complain about my horses. 10 years, they're going to complain about my cows. And then something I've been doing for my whole life on this property, the code is going to force me to stop. And that's not the intent, I believe. I'm not part of Temple, so I don't believe that's the intent of anybody here, nor in the past, so I think it's just something we need to correct. So, that's a quick summary. I'll stop there and ask if you have any questions, and then we'll start going into the data that I brought with me relative to that issue first. But the map changes we had last week were mine. So I've got those, but I just, before I go any further with you guys, what are y'all's gut feeling relative to that conversation? Do you agree, disagree? Is there an issue? You understand why I'm doing what I'm presenting?
Not really, does need to be addressed.
But I mean, I think it was ever the intent.
Why wouldn't they already be grandfathered in?
Well, I think it is. I think it is. And I'm not a lawyer by any means, but I believe they have the rights that they've always had.
Right.
Okay. But you probably remember the story, and I'm gonna get this story wrong too. In Roswell, the Chicken Man. Remember that? Okay. With enough political pressure, you can push them out, grandfathered or not. Legally, I don't believe you can, but I'm just saying, but I think it's cleaner and easier if we do it through the code and the ordinance. I think that, to me, I think that's the way to go. That's what I recommend. And I apologize for not catching it as we were working through the process last time. It never dawned on me, but I didn't think we were creating an issue. It never crossed my mind. But as we dug into it this time, and I think when calling Mr. Stedham the very first meeting, got me thinking, I bet they're trapped. I bet they're caught in the code that it's not allowed. I don't know that, but I feel pretty certain it's that way. Granted they're grandfather, but if it's in the code, it can always be argued, grandfather or not. Then you can argue what is grandfather and what does grandfather not mean. And so you get into what is the definition of is, and I don't want to get into the definition of what is. Is. I'd rather be clear. So.
When I lived in Old Roman Road, I had a pasture behind my house, which Old Roman Road right in town. And I had cows.
Okay.
And so the pasture's probably still there.
Right. And so that was kind of my thoughts is what I want to talk about the two codes I brought, which is Carrollton and Bremen. Very high level. I'm going to pass it out. My thoughts are I want to research those two. I want to research some other surrounding towns and try to figure out the things that make sense out of each one of those, so that then I can sort of highlight it and then probably bring it back to you guys and or talk with the attorney as far as how to create a draft ordinance that we can start trying to work that through. And so the thoughts would be that by the time we get that draft ordinance ready, that we would present the draft ordinance. We'd present signed letters from the property owners that want to go to that draft ordinance, and a map that matches that so that we go A, B, C all in one meeting. That is my goal. So I'm not going to meet October 2nd or whatever the date is for council for the zoning map. And I do apologize. I should have got on this issue earlier because I knew it. I hadn't had a chance to slow down and think about it. But I was happy to see when I pulled Bremen and Carrollton today, they're pretty close. So I think we got a good starting point. And we'll summarize it very briefly today because Bremen's is like 2 pages. Carrollton's is a lot more. But I'm going to pass them out so that we can start thinking about them. So, y'all good? Ready to start? Since I threw you a big curveball to start off with, I still won't talk for 2 hours. I'm trying my best on it. Kristen can put the clock on me. Yeah. All right. So, okay, so to start, these 2 one-pagers are basically Bremen. Yeah, that's perfect.
How would you have enough copies for the?
I've got 10, so I was going to pass them out and then see if we need more. And then
Also make more if we need to.
I got 10 of each of them, so I think we're going to be close.
We don't have to remember what's that.
And then we can see how many copies we need. Yeah, sorry. You got that? I got it. I'm going to keep that one for me. You good? You got one up? Okay. There you go. And then, let's see. What I got here? I want to try to get everybody.
Is that Bremen you got?
Yeah, this is Bremen, and then I've got Carrollton to pair it up. Let's see how many I need.
So
Looks like I'm gonna need one more.
Okay.
I got one on my desk.
I got
Give me two
Mr.
more.
Osborne, will you do two more?
Run the next one for me, Bill. One, two. You want an extra one? We need three, Bill. So this one's an easy one. I'll look over her shoulder right now. So basically, the first page where it says Article 4 zoning district, those are just the general districts in Bremen. You'll see that ER, estate residential, with a minimum of 3 acres. One of the discussions I want to have is relative to the 3 acre. What I had always seen previous was 5 acres. We just got to talk about it, see where we want that to land. Go to the second page. You're going to have to hold it way away from us so I don't have to get back. I'm just kidding. So, the ER district is intended for low-density residential purposes where agricultural type conditional uses would be expected. The regulations for this district are designed to encourage one-family dwellings situated in lots having 3 acres or larger. Talks about the different things you can have on it. Talks about it basically you have all the same uses that are allowed in all the residential districts. And then it talks about non-commercial, horticultural, and agricultural uses include. This is item 3. You see that? Everybody see that?
Yeah.
All right, so it says field crops, livestock, and riding stable, provided that no poultry livestock shall be maintained within 50 feet of property line. No building within 200, at least 1 acre of fence shall be provided for each animal. My thoughts are that sounds very restrictive to me, and just in general notes. Now, if I was going to use part of this, and I'm not saying I am yet, I got this gentleman here, Mr. Osborne. Oh, he gave me one, okay, perfect. And then I need one of them. I was the other. My thoughts is if we use that language, I'm not saying we do yet, is that we would put in there any new. So let's say Mr. Stedham, right? He has a property. He goes into this. If he has for instance, a livestock area, within 50 feet of the property line, I don't see that as a problem. So I think what we have to say in here, if we want to restrict them back off the property line, then it needs to say any new, and we may even have to refer to any property zoned ER at the date of this zoning ordinance, which we'll throw out a date, December 2nd or whatever, that they do not have to comply with that restriction.
You move to this side.
Yep,
so-
sorry. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
We want this camera to get to the better side.
I don't know there is a good side. So, and that's what, I didn't read these in depth because, like I say, I think these are things that we have to talk about as a group and see how restrictive we want to be. But there's one in Brayton, okay? So then the next one is Carrollton, and it's, I think there's 27 pages of this one. But it's called, I just printed the whole section. I got it.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure. We'll make some more there. Yeah. I'll lay one here on your desk, Bill.
Okay.
This one's a little, it's not as easy to read, let's just say that. I'll walk everybody through it. I think there's only one there. Maybe we have some more coming there. So, what I printed out here, I hope I don't bother you. I'll read over Linda's shoulder. That way I can get on the camera. So I get my magnifying stuff. This is smaller print. All right, so this one says, they have 2 different ones, okay? ER3 and then ER1. So our ER1 would just be, I would assume that match up pretty close to our R1. ER3, here again, this is Carrollton, they're 3 acres still. But I would venture to say that most of the farms around Carrollton are probably still in the county, realistically. But this district is intended to encourage one-family dwellings situated on large lots. with the provision of septic. And so, then the next thing I printed out is a table of land uses, okay? So the very first column in this use is ER1, ER3. So I'm just gonna walk down the list of allowable uses. And so the way they break this down, make sure I say this right, is P is for permissible. So if there's a P there, you have that. If you have that zoning and there's a P in that slot, you have it by right. S would be through special use. Blank would mean it's prohibited. So what I see there is, S is by permissible subject to supplemental standards. SU is special use. So agricultural is S, so there's some supplemental standards, which I'm going to go ahead and jump to first. I think that's the prime topic, and then we'll come back and go through the rest of the uses. So if we go to the end of that table, it doesn't have pages on it, so bear with me. Flip through until you see at the top of the page is 20400. So this says basically specific uses permissible in each zoning district are identified in table 2.0303. Uses permissible subject to supplemental standards are identified by the letter S. These uses are permissible only in compliance with standards applicable to the zoning district and with any applicable zoning, legal stuff. So basically it says animals allowed, domestic animals, farm animals, and livestock. Wild animals are prohibited, so that's something y'all gotta figure out if y'all want to let lions and tigers and bears and all in. Minimum land area, building structures, stables, livestock barns, pens, plant nurseries, greenhouses, outdoor tracks, exercise yards, setback 100 feet. Odor and pest, management plan for odor and pest, fences, the parcel shall be fenced. Now here again, I think this is something that we would look at to make sure that it's clear that if an existing farm already had a building within 100 feet, that they would be exempt. In other words, we need to write a section about exemptions. That if it's an existing operation or it's existing zoning as of the date we adopt this ordinance, they would, that. But now if they wanted to come build a new building, they would have to still comply. They couldn't add one, but we wouldn't go out there and say, you got to take it down. Odor and pest, we'll have to talk about that one. Like I said, that could be a very loose, that could be easy to interpret different ways, and that's always dangerous. So, Bremen didn't have that. I would think that is more of a nuisance ordinance rather than a zoning ordinance. And so I don't know that it even needs to be in a zoning code. That should be a general item. It says here, the above notwithstanding persons may have, control, or possess up to, and these are some things we'll have to think about, 6 female chickens, hens on properties.
No rooster.
What's this? No male roosters are permitted. Any such hens must be enclosed in a pen, coop, or other structure. So it's just something to think about. Like I say, the key is, the question is, what do we have operating in the city, and how restrictive do we want to be for new ones? I would just ask this question: does anybody in the city have chickens that run wild? That do?
No,
Okay,
that's not.
okay, that's fine. I didn't know. So can't butcher them on property.
Yeah, it's all that.
They were not like my grandmother. Feedlots, agricultural processing, that's all in industrial zoning. Accessory dwellings are permissible in ER1, ER3 zoning district subject to standards permitted as an accessory use to single family. The living quarters may be situated within an attached or detached structure on the same tract. Dwelling shall be used only as a bona fide, non-paying guest or relatives of owners. So as you can see between these two, Councilman. Very different, right? One, I would argue one gets way down in the weeds and one's more generic. Not sure where we need to go, but I want you to start thinking about that. I will try to get some more examples, but you know, I think the key is one, that we adopt an ER. We need to set what that acreage is, and we need to make sure that we say that these entities that are requesting to be ER, or that were RD at the original and is still operating under that, I don't know what the right word is there, still operating as the same type business, how about that, or family, that they're exempt. In other words, what they do today, they can do. Now, if they start trying to do something new, that's where you would deal with it in the code. But I can always argue more restrictive and less restrictive in the words of the code. You know, just depends. I think the thing you'll have going for you is that the only tracks that I would say are going to most likely go after being ER are existing operations. Okay? So you're going to have what you have. The code's really going to be set up more for if somebody wants to come in and create a new one. Now, here again, I would argue, and there would be a legal discussion that we'd have to get the answer. If I come in and I buy the mayor's property, I should have those same rights to operate as he does. Still can't go build it, assuming the code says I can't build a stable 100 feet from the property line. Still can't go build a new building just like he can, but I can operate as he does right now. I would say that's how it ought to be set up. Yes, ma'am.
What if, say, he wants to sign it off to his kids because they're tired of dealing? Do they get it always was, so it is, or is it new to them?
Yeah, no, I would think that they would have the same rights as him.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if there's let's say there's a stable 20 feet off the property line,
Mm-hmm.
they can still use it. Now, if they ever take it down, they
Right.
can't put it back.
Okay.
So I think that, and one of the reasons I said that is a city that's near and dear to my heart, it's real close to you guys, tried to write a code back many years ago in the downtown area that said if they didn't want your type business that you couldn't sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you sold it and you were, let's
Yeah.
say this is trying to be nice here. Huey's Record Service downtown. I don't know what city it's in. You probably know where it was. Anyway, there was a record service.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so they didn't want that downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was set up that if he ever sold, it could not be a record service because that was not allowed in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they undid that code in law because there was a lot of pushback. That is not my intent.
What if, like, you know, like right now, if you have so many acres, you can get a real big tax break by having agriculture. That's with the county. That doesn't apply to the city's taxes when they do your taxes? So your city taxes are just on the land and not based on that tax break for agriculture right now?
I don't know that well enough, to be honest with you. I don't know if you get a city break or not. I don't think you do, but there again, I think it's 10 acres. Don't you have 10 acres or more than that to get the agricultural conservation?
Well, the property we're concerned about is in the conservation program. It has several more years to run.
Do you get a,
You know, not all of it, but most of it's in the city limits.
do you get a city tax break?
We get a tax break?
You get the county tax break because it's agricultural.
Yeah, we
And
get
then
the state tax.
Is the
Yeah.
city a tax break too, that part of it, of your taxes? Is the city part of your taxes?
Of course it is.
So
But
you
it-
do get that right now?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we wouldn't be,
Okay.
what we're doing wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Okay, I was just wondering
You
if
can't-
it applies there.
You can't cut the timber off of it or do anything to alter it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that piece of property on
10 acres.
O'Shea Road and Stedham Road is in that conservation
Yeah.
program.
I just was wondering, when you get your tax bill, do you get you know how you get a big tax break on the county side? I wondered if you got it on the city side too.
It's all based on the appraisal.
Yeah.
So if there's no more questions, just in general on this, what I'd like to do is pass out the map, go through the changes, thanks sir, go through the changes that I made, which were very minor, and then what I've done is I've highlighted some tracks, and I haven't looked at these, so I don't know what the guy gave me exactly, but I've highlighted tracks that I believe are potentially agricultural, and what I need y'all to do is help me determine if there's more, so that we can reach out and make sure that we're reaching out to those property owners and we get them involved. Yes, sir.
Well, see, I have had my property over there since 1968. I trust Mrs. Williams, I trust Mr. McClure, with their decision, but I wouldn't trust that city council as far as I control this bill. When I have watched them, we can't approve this, and then the next meeting turn around and approve it, by a 4-1 vote. So I don't know how Mr. Steadham's feel, but I want my property left agricultural like it was. No one has put a rezoning on my property back in '06 or '07, whenever this was done. And like I said, Mr. McClure and Ms. Williams, and my appointment cannot attend the meetings now because of his health, and the city council refused to replace him with the one that he recommended to take his place. And I want mine back like it has always been, in rural RFA, where I can keep my farm animals or whatever I want to have over there. And my situation still stands. If somebody will buy all my property at market value, now I will leave the city. I told that to the city council years ago. If they just buy it at fair market value, if I'm a threat, I will go. Other than that, I worked hard to buy my property, and I bought it at market value whenever I did back in 1968, and just want to be left alone and live over there. I'm not wanting to sell it for residential. My nephew, his portion of it is in the conservation land program, now as rural land, and although I trust some of these members, but I want my stuff left like it was in the rural farm program, like it was. I don't have mine in there because I pay the full load of taxes on mine. I'm not in that. I could be in that if I chose to, but I choose to pay my fair market value of the taxes every year, whatever they, assessments it. Stedham was telling me about his, being reassessed in some areas over there. But just want to live peacefully and go by the rules that I can go by. But hey, that's what I want mine at, and I will not be satisfied with anything really short of that.
And what I would say, while he was talking there, it made me think of something. One of the things I think that I need to research also is what was the original RD zoning code? How did it read? So that might be one option, is to just add that one back in. Whether it be RD, ER, whatever, but that might be a go-by to look at, as well as, I know I have an O2 map, and to the best of my knowledge, the colors were tough in the O2 map. I don't know that I remember even seeing an RD on that map, but I know there used to be one. I don't know what the code is called, but let me see what I can find through my research on that old code. And that might be a starting point, because that is historical to Temple, and that might be something we can also start with. But the main thing was to get your thought process on working that back into the code as well as into the map. So,
I know they tried to change the farm animal ordinance or whatever several years ago, They tried to make it so that if you took an animal off your property, you couldn't bring one like it back or it back. But for whatever reason, that failed, and they couldn't do it. There was somebody complaining about somebody had a goat or something like that.
Is
and
that in the city, though?
That was in the city, and that was within the last 15 years. And for whatever legal reason, they couldn't change it. So within not 30 years,
Yeah.
they've tried to change it and couldn't. So there was a legal reason. I know
Yeah.
that. So,
And like I say, so that, it might be the easiest path to at least get us out of the gate is just come back into that RD, and then we can always look at what tweaks we want to make, but at least get us rolling. So, let's walk through the map and let's talk about properties that, people think maybe should be considered, agricultural. So, what happened to my map? So this right here is industrial. Alright. I apologize, I just noticed something. So on this page, on map A, the one that I noticed that I think is wrong is the one between Liberty Road and the railroad. I think that's supposed to be, well, I know that's supposed to be industrial. I'm pretty positive that's not the boss's property.
can I get one of those for him?
Yeah.
This one here is just,
Yeah, and I know that's industrial, and I think this is industrial also. But the properties to the north, I know the one on the right side of Moore is Dr. Ball. So I can ask him. But there's a big tract between Asbury and 113. Any idea what that is? Whether or not that's supposed to be agriculture? Any idea?
So we were talking about.
Between Asbury and 113.
That's the hill property, yes. That's the hill property, it's down up in the state, I want it. It's agriculture.
Show me on the big one. I've been looking at it.
I don't have the big one, but I guess it's gonna be right here.
I had looked at it earlier, that was previously zoned prior, or previously looked at before the city, started, doing the changes that we did. That particular piece of property, basically that entire loop there was agricultural before it actually, I think it had
RD.
been, it had been designated a resident, rural development.
RD.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, I'm taking it to Mr. Jason?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Howard. All right, so that's kind of what I'm looking for, is the ones that used to be RD. So that's what's happened, RD, R40 has all gotten rolled up in that R1. And so I'm trying to figure out which ones were originally RD.
I can tell you exactly where it's at. If you pull up the city plan, which is available on the website, it's got the usage prior to the plan. It's the 2008 to 2028 plan that I'm referring to.
Yeah, that's the comp plan, that doesn't follow zoning.
But it said, basically on there, it's got current usage on there on one of the maps.
Okay.
And that's where I generally started referring back to, looking at that. And that was previously used as agriculture.
But that, right, and that's what, so what I've got to do is bring it back to the legal side of the zoning, so, I know I have an 02 map, which obviously was before we rolled everything up, so, the only thing I'm worried about my 02 map is I know that the yellows and golds really blend together after they've been faded, but, that's what I was going, so, then the other one I would ask about up there is the one that's adjacent to it. It's more of a triangle there in Asbury and Rainy Road.
Asbury.
Across the street, basically.
Yes, sir. All of that, other than the subdivision, was previously agricultural.
Okay. Well, RD, right, because there wasn't an RD, but I'm with you. You're thinking that pretty much went up all the larger tracks up Rainy Road, right?
Yes, sir. I do. I remember looking at it today.
I know that past the school on Rainy Road is the Russell's property, and I think it might be that big square. And they have horses,
And what was the name?
Russell's.
Spell that for me.
RUSSOM.
Okay, that's what I said, I want to make sure.
And I think this might be farm too, but I'm not real sure. I know they are because I know them, but I don't know the guy.
Yeah. And I would expect all those up there in that upper edge are.
Yeah.
Like I said, and I know you guys came in late, so the game plan is to research what was originally RD back in pre-2002, and then also pull that existing code, what the code said in RD at that time. And then we talk about estate residential code changes potentially for 3 acres or 5 acres, which allow that agricultural use. All right, so flip over to map C. And I can see the ones I haven't read, which I believe are the ones that Mr. Bice had given me that are agricultural there in the bottom left. What about across the street, across 78? I know that was originally, we did a plan. I think we even got zoning approval for a big PUD, DCD back in the day. But I don't know that it ever got approved. Highland, do you remember if it got approved? Right here on the corner. I know that we did the plan. That was when, back probably around 2002.
In that 08 plan, that is that one, and I don't know the owner of that particular piece of property, and Mr. What's the people out there on the road? It was one of the few parcels that remained in green, marked as ag. It's one of the 3 parcels in the entire town that remain marked as ag in the 2008, 2009.
So, Old Kenny property, and Mr. Muse, his son-in-law, owned that until he, I think, lost it. But see, that other guy here is bought that has got this agricultural tree farm.
And that's sort of, this red is what Jason had given, as far as he felt that was definitely on ag. RD, whatever we'll go to, ER, where we head to. Any other tracks? I think I checked that one. I think this one's got horses on it right here by the lake. This is these two, isn't it? These two right here. This is Lakeview, and the lake's back here. That's what I was looking.
He's not on the lake though, he's on Lake.
I think it's both those tracks. He's just on this side, you think? I was thinking I had seen horses on that one.
He's got horses on both sides.
Both sides there, right? That's what I thought. That's what I remember. And that was, you following me where I was, Jason?
Yes, sir, I do.
So just looking at the rest of those, I think that probably covers map C, or is there any other ones that you think need to be looked at from a RD agricultural use?
That property on Lakeview Drive comes down to 78.
Yeah, those two I got them, yep.
That belongs to Gerald Logwood, their agricultural land.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, I marked those.
And Larry Mann property across the street.
Somebody had told me that Larry's was.
I think it's the same designation as Mr. Stebbins, I believe.
Right, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you can get the exemption if you have a certain number of acres. You have to have an animal or anything for conservation, right? So you could technically be zoned commercial and still get a conservation if there was nothing on it. Because the zoning doesn't restrict you, does it?
I think the soil conservation, we've got some out in the county, it's timber acre, and it's on, it's in the conservation. We've got some in the county that has a hayfield on part of it, and 30 acres of it is in timber farm, and 10 acres is in a hayfield. That's all on, agricultural.
I guess that's my question. Do you have to be zoned agricultural to technically get the conservation? You don't, do you?
I would think so, but I don't know.
I don't know, I'm asking.
I think you can't build on it or change.
Correct, but it doesn't really matter what you're zoned, as long as it's a natural piece of
Oh, I
property.
don't
Conservation is a conservation easement.
Right,
And it's like basically a tax thing.
right, right. It really doesn't tie to zoning is my point. And that's,
Same thing with area and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought that.
something like that. And here's why I'm asking, like Larry Mann, I believe he's got it in a tax exemption, whatever you call conservation. But I don't believe it's agricultural zone right there, is what I'm getting at. I don't think those two are tied, but I can ask Larry, and we're gonna.
And actually, because I believe that I saw that the Carroll County tax rolls, well, it is zoned agricultural conservation. So you have to check on that.
Okay. Well, and like I say, to me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through the zoning, my game plan, the zoning plans, because that's what we're working with. That's kind of how I need to find it that way. I don't really care what the county's doing, because the county doesn't do zoning here. That would become more of a legal discussion. That's above Howard's pay grade. How about that? That's the easiest way to say that one. All right, map C, anybody else?
Well, discussing the rural stuff.
Portion right here, dental lab has been there since
Yeah.
1974.
Yep, good catch. Besides that, on the way. The upper side, right? And is it that full track, or is there actually, is it cut out?
She owns the whole track right there, but that was in that house portion, and see, back in the day, you can have certain type businesses like
In-home.
law offices and dental labs and a few other things were specified that you can have in the
In-home.
R1 and 2 area.
Gotcha.
But see, there again, with this city council, unless it's written in stone, nothing matters to them. Whenever they make statements up here, I don't care what the charter states, we got the votes to do anything that we can want to do, and this is the way they act up here, and until it's written, in like the written word here, because somebody else, will handle it sooner or later. See, the other zoning allowed that in there.
Yeah, one of the things that I've sort of come to realize, I gotta find that old zoning code. I think I have it, I'm not sold, but somebody's got it, I feel certain. And we need to go through it and make sure that any things that were allowed there carries forward into this one. So yeah, I'm with you, I got a note here on
See,
that.
what I was under the impression of, that we were updating this map to take care of the things that had changed, where people came up here, and asked for their property to be rezoned, and got it done. Like Mr. Baxter's over here, one time, he wanted his office, and he went through the deal to get back to residential. He went through the proper steps to do that. And I thought that's what we were doing with this map. And nobody notified me in 06 or 07, about any of the stuff. And that's what I'm up here wanting my property, like I'm sure like Mr. Stedham's property does, to be just left alone. Let me pay my taxes and let me continue to operate the way we have been operating since 1965 or 4, whenever, I moved to.
Yeah, and sort of give you a little more explanation as other than we are doing exactly what you talked about doing, trying to finish it up. So what happened is when we brought the zoning code forward and rolled those things up, that's sort of when the things sort of crashed. I wasn't working as much in Temple. And then the next thing I know, 4, 5, 6 years later, we see a zoning map on the wall that the RDC had done which actually matched the future land use map we did in 0708. So then, over 50% of the properties in Douglasville on all corridors were commercial, and that's not what they are. So we're trying to undo some of the things that got done incorrectly and try to build back to. So everything you're saying, I agree. We've got to try to figure out how we marry up not only what rolled forward in 07, 08, so everything that was allowed in RD at that time got to still be allowed. And same thing with, like I said, in any of the what I'm called exceptions, for lack of a better word, in the in-home, those type of things, those all still need to be in place, especially for things that already exist. So, yeah, that's the intent, is to not create issues for things that exist today, but to prevent issues from coming in new. All right, map D. And then this is the one I was asking you about, Mr. Stedham. I know which one's yours, but is this yours?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. I guessed on that one the other day. And then that's the cities across the street, across Stedham, is it not? Isn't this the cities?
This right there belongs to the city.
Yeah, so that should be 09. Is that you?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
We've got this little piece of property here. This was attached to this.
Okay.
Strange piece of property, but that's our property too. That little
Okay.
strange triangle right there.
Yep.
It says Old Mill Road, but I always thought it was oil, O-I-L, cottonseed oil.
And to be honest with you, I don't know.
I don't know either. But one time there was a cottonseed oil mill on that street. I think that's how it drives its name.
So right,
I'm not old enough to remember it, but I've been told that.
so right now, I've got that as R2. I'm gonna make the assumption here, you wanna take that back and match the rest of your stuff.
Well, it's
not a
such a strange piece of property. It would be far, far in the future for use for it, because the gas and railroad on one side, 78 on the other. It's kind of
Because that's not part of it, it's just this piece, right? Just a linear piece. Okay.
everything on the east side of Old Mill Road.
Yep. And, okay, so that brings up a question. There was a question raised last meeting, whether or not Old Mill, Oil Mill, or whether it had been closed and deeded back to both properties. Do you remember that ever happening?
As far as I know, it was never closed.
Okay.
I think Mother Nature.
Right. This is history.
There's a stream of water that runs beside that piece of property. And the name of that stream of water, according to the city, is Curtis Creek. It's not much of a creek, it's more of a spring.
Gotcha.
But it had detrimental effect on Old Mill or Oil Mill Road, because sometimes it overflew and went down the middle of that dirt road.
Gotcha.
Now it's cut right down the middle of it. You walk down.
Okay.
Every time. It's down there.
All right. Any other tracks?
I got a couple of questions for you. All right, so right there in the middle of the town where you see OI, which is Office Institutional, and then there's a couple of, if you look at it, there's a couple of red spots where it's general commercial. I know I haven't seen a definition out here that we have, but do we need to pull those in together? The reason I'm asking is because it looks a lot like spot zoning, and that's something you want to avoid in the future.
That's exactly what it was, and we're just matching what exists in the zoning today. In other words, that was something that I don't know of it ever changing, but I know that the 02, I think a 98 map showed the same thing, so I sort of matched up, just married up with those. And what I'm guessing is somebody wanted to perform something that was not allowed in O&I, probably retail, probably not an O&I link, and so that they had to go into the city or general commercial, whatever it was back then.
Second question is right there on James Street. I know that they're on the left there, right after those apartments. I don't know if there's a church there or not, but I know there's an AT&T building. I'm not sure.
Right up against that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's right below the town, the schoolhouse, Trace or whatever, right? Like I'm coming from the railroad down James, the townhomes are on the right.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
right there on the right.
Right before you get to it, yeah, it's like a little.
Oh, yeah. The switch center, I know exactly where it is.
Shouldn't the church there be
That's
over
the church there.
My thoughts are that church is probably under special needs with you, I guess.
I have a.
I don't know that, I just know that the maps didn't show anything, but I'll make a note to look, just double check.
I have a couple of questions when you get around to it. On, the old, let's call it Old Temple downtown,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of spotted up. You got most of it is O1. But I see on this Greenland map, they've got a classification C1, which is Central Business District. I think that'd be more appropriate than O1, because some of it's retail, some of it's, there's a church there, there's an office, a couple of offices there. It's mixed use, and I don't think it's all O1.
Well, and what I would say is this, is what you see now mimics what the past maps and zonings
Yeah.
have shown. Now, with that said, one of the categories we did create is the central business district. So what might make sense as we work our way through this, next step would maybe to look at what this is, what's defined as the downtown development authority area maybe,
Yeah,
as
well,
a starting
I think
point,
that'd be more
and maybe
appropriate.
look at that, switch, and look at what the uses are under, in other words, in the zoning book, this category exists, but there's not a single piece of property that's zoned that way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that was one of the thoughts when we rolled up into this newer categories. That was a thought that just never got to the point where we did that.
Well, we have a piece of property there on, across the railroad track.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the only thing we had that was on commercial on the old original map. And now it's office institutional.
That's the one on the corner,
On the
correct?
very corner, so the one next to it is on commercial. The city of Temple owns the one on the other side of that one, I don't know why, but they do. And I don't know that it'd ever be a problem, but if that was ever developed, I think it would be commercial, not office institutional over there. Might could join with the people that own it. Well, next to it is selling as one parcel.
Yeah. What I would recommend, there's so many mole holes we can go down. There's thousands, okay? And that's one I think we need to. But what I would suggest is that we discuss the central business district, downtown development, under the future land use discussions. And let's talk about doing something creative. Let's get out of the way things have been done in the past. In other words, let's untie those opportunities. In other words, I'm not saying this would happen in Temple, but maybe we want an opportunity to have the business downstairs with the apartments upstairs. But some of those buildings could support that. You know, I'm thinking Barry's Pharmacy downtown, you know, in Laredo. I mean, I would say, I'd like for us to look at what we can do from a zoning to assist the city in getting grants to recreate downtown. And I'm not sure, that's not my background of visioning and saying this is what
We've
you
always
know.
had that goal in mind.
Right. And zoning can help that. And that may be something we want to talk with some of the regional development centers, RDCs, whatever it stands for, and see what kind of things they can do to help maybe lead that discussion. You know, I'm not a planner by any means. I'm an engineer. Wife called engineer. So I know what I like, and I think that you need to untie the hands down there to give the opportunity for the grants. And there's a lot of grants out there that are available for mixed uses, you know, and as well as, you know, downtown grants. So, but I would say let's try to handle that as a different package, because I think it's a discussion. I'm not sure if the DDA still operates in Temple, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. But, you know, I think that's a discussion that needs to be had. Don't take this the wrong way, but much like the record for years and years, what we're doing right now, it ain't working.
I agree with that.
You know, and so,
We've got a big couple pieces of, two little lots over here on Johnson Street, and they're landlocked. Southern Railroad owns the largest piece of property. which faces Johnson Street. And it has a value of $1 for tax purposes, and we're landlocked behind it, can't get out, got no access to a road anywhere, and they went up to $7,500 each on those two little parcels. It makes absolutely no sense to me, because I've been down there fighting with them, and they refuse to lower it, but they won't tell me how to come to the railroad pays $1, and they want $15,000 out of me on two little lots I had no hope of selling.
Might be a good city park.
You know what I mean? You know, one of them's got water running through it, and
I don't know if the city
it
wants
takes
more
$15,000 worth of pipe to get the water to cover it up.
I don't know if the city wants any more property, but.
I think Carroll County needs the money.
There you go, there you go. All right. Anything else on map D? I think we're good there. Map E, those are pretty much the same that we just talked about. Talk on these a lot here. Okay. And then one over to map F, and this gets back over on the west side of town. I think I picked up these, you see the red lines around what Jason had given me. Not sure if they're on Venable, where I got that little gap. My thoughts are that's where I need to double back and look at the old map and see what it showed. The 3 or 4 tracks or, you know.
That portion down there, marked DCD, design concept development, is that recently been cut, I guess, land. But that's the part that lies in Harrison County, right?
Yes. I believe this is the line that's Harrison County.
I do too. But I'm not, is it design concept development because they're thinking about building a property out there?
Yeah, it was designed for, I'm shooting from the hip here, it's like 900 plus units, townhomes, residential. I don't remember if there was apartments on it or not, but there was a site plan that it's tied to, so it's unlikely somebody will build exactly that site plan, which will drive them back through the zoning process.
I think the one Jason was talking about is the one that is in Harrison County up above the DCD that you're talking about.
The R1.
No, I am talking about that one right there. They're both, I think those are both in Harrison County.
They are, and that north one is the Mize tract, and that's what, I need to find what the zoning, I know it went through zoning, but I can't remember what they went to.
That's the one that is not showing on the Harrison County tax value, isn't it? And didn't we say that the attorneys maybe they'll never follow through on the annexation?
Right, but what I,
That was supposed to be a gated community back in the day, and homes and all.
and I want to say it was DCD, but I need to find that plan, and I have not found it in my files. In other words, what I want to try to confirm is what was it zoned to. Now, I remember him going after DCD, but I'm kind of thinking we pushed him off of that. See, the one I think has town, I think this was all resident. I don't think this was multifamily. This was the one they had the multifamily in this blue. It was the big, like 1,200 acres. I don't remember the exact acreage, but that was Terry Dobbins did this one. And then Jack Mize came in after Cool Springs came in. He came in and we went through this, but I just can't. I remember it, but I don't know.
This road right here was supposed to go straight down this property line here and develop all of that back in there. That's years ago, but that rezoned, to be.
But you're like me, you agree that he did get it approved. The question is, what is he tied to, right?
Yeah, he got it
That's what I thought.
approved to build those, I think, condominiums like townhomes in there. And then he went back there.
Right. And I know Crawford did it, and I don't know if it doesn't pass away, but I can reach out to Mike and John Bass and see what they might have in their files.
The DCD is not all in Harrison. Carroll County right here, you know what this is? It's just the,
I think that
It
that
is.
is in Carroll County.
It is Carroll, yeah, see the big gray line, I see it now.
the only thing in Harrison is where you got R1 up there on Mount West.
Yeah, that mines, yeah. See the big bold? I was thinking it went straight north or south, but it doesn't, it comes in, got a bend right there.
Well, the only thing in Harrison in question is that R1 on Mount, that was the Jack Mines property. I don't think they ever followed through with that.
Staff. In other words, I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. Do you believe that it was approved through city council?
As I recall.
Right, that's my belief too.
Probably dig up the minutes on it.
On this property.
Yeah, that's what I just want to make sure that's what he remembered too. Because you would have been on the planning.
But then, yeah, the finish just died out, it all fizzled out.
And so the question, I think what Howard's saying is, did the attorneys for Harrelson County and the city of Temple dot the i's, cross the t's? And so what Howard is saying is based on some of the conversations he's had is that that's not showing up on our tax roll.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Harrison County is not collecting.
Taxes, city taxes on that property.
And they need to be.
Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Anything else there? I know that's the most fence across Centerpoint. And
Right there on the other side of Center Point, that's Billings Road and all that. Never mind. That brings up a little bit of a quick question on asphalt. I know that one thing that we didn't put anywhere in our zoning, and maybe I'm bringing up something I shouldn't, was I didn't see any parks listed in zoning, and I didn't see any of the wetlands listed. And that might be something that might come back to bite us later on. I know that the reason I ask is I know that there's a creek running right through the middle of that property.
relative to environmental ordinance, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
It should be in there, but if it's not, we definitely need to get it in there.
So I think it's one of those two creeks join together right over there, running the road, basically line up, becoming a little Calacosa at some point.
Yeah, and what we did, I do know that we approved the model ordinances from the, North Georgia Metropolitan Planning District, maybe, Blue Book stormwater people, we did adopt their model ordinance for stormwater and erosion control, litter ordinance. About 5 of their models we did adopt at that time. So, in theory, our ordinances are stronger than most everybody else in Carroll County relative to that. But whether or not they're showing up in the book is another. Now, one of the things we need to do also is the development code, which is more what I'm gonna call the engineering booklet or the zoning code, which says the roads need to be, if it's this many lots, it has to be this wide. If it's this many lots, it has to be this wide. You have to have this many entrances. You know, that's the piece of the puzzle we're missing also, that we're working through in this process. But it'll be, I guess what I'm headed there is it'll be, the environmental discussion would be covered in that document also. All right, looking at map F, that's pretty much what we'd already looked at. Map G is pretty much the same. Take it up, C. Map H.
On map H, where it's white in the center of all the color, what does that mean? That's
It's
county?
county.
It-
Yeah, best I remember, and I bet Lester will probably remember too. This tract right here is owned by the city, which is part of our wastewater treatment facility. We were in the process of, that's technically, the best I remember, county, still in the county, not in the city. Okay?
Last time you were saying because it was landlocked, you know, there's another little square somewhere like that.
Yes.
That they should just come and give it to the city?
Right. Well,
Do you have to
well,
ask?
and in their case, they're not technically landlocked because this out here is technically not the city.
Oh, a road, okay, yeah.
In other words, we were getting ready, we were trying to rezone this in even though we didn't have to. This was the discussion, if you remember when I was saying the city doesn't have to comply with county zoning ordinances. County doesn't have to comply with city zoning ordinances. So we were trying to do right, bring this into the city, and these residents went wild.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And in their defense, when you drove into Temple back then, I smelled the sewer plant as I came across Little Tallapoosa.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
So if somebody told me they were going to expand it, I'd have been raising hell too.
Yeah.
You know, but I think I think we fixed that.
Yeah.
But so at that point in time, the city council and mayor said, you know what, we're getting beat up for no reason. Let's move on.
Okay.
So
Makes sense.
in theory, those should all be white.
Yeah.
But since they're city owned, I went ahead and colored them in. Just
Oh, okay.
That, at the corner of Villa Rosa and Bar J Road, right there where the green meets the purple.
Yep.
You know, that biggest lot right there.
gas station.
Gas station.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Pump station.
Yep, and it's got a cleaner and all that. Yeah, that's VCG. Yeah, and that's what I want to say is, I will be surprised when we adopt this if it'll be 100% correct. I think there'll be more, but that's what, the more eyes we can get on it, the more catching of those little things we're going to catch. And then I think that it's a situation, for instance, like downtown, that we go back after we get at least a base approved. Then we go back and start looking at those areas, trying to figure out how to clean them up, maybe a little cleaner if the property owners are willing.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, almost, you know, this R6 piece right here, this is almost all designated.
Yeah, it's in the buffer.
That's land.
Yeah, it's undeveloped.
Creek and, you know.
I don't believe that's R6 though.
On the corner of,
So that's
West
fine.
Road, Bar J, there's a big tract there, it's on R2, it has a convenience store and a
Yep,
laundromat on it, now, it used to be a car wash, that's a laundromat.
yep, yep, got that one. And then I think this one's wrong also, back behind this, industrial development. I think that's industrial back here too.
Yeah,
We're going across on Bar J Road back there, it is part of the DCD. And we've got it on, that was supposed to be commercial, or irregardless, they would have to come back before the planning commission.
Yeah, you know, I remember when we were doing the DCD, that was the intent. I don't know that I ever remember them actually getting the commercial. Well, I think they got this, the northern green track, I believe it might be commercial, but I'm not sure about the southern. I know that was the intent. I looked through my, but we did that plan for them way back in '03.
Well, should that just be the yellow, the DCD rather than the yellow one?
Yeah, right, what he's right. If it did, if it was part of that zone, which would be, it would show up in my boundary, and it would have some type of designation, then it would. But let me go pull my plat that we use for zoning, and if it's included in it, then it would change to yellow.
Yeah, and then if they want commercial on it, they can come apply for it.
They'd have to still comply with the plan, or they'd have to update the DCD plan. Once we pop up, I'll go with this. Pressing them. No, supposed to hit that bell on me. All right. I won't stop talking if nobody has any questions.
Howard, I got a quick question. I was in late, I apologize for that, but what's the plan at this point?
Okay, yeah, and let me see if I have copies of. So one of the things we started
I
off.
gave her mine.
Okay, you got it. So one of the things we started off with was backing up a step and making sure that property rights that exist today, existed in 2000 and so forth, are still protected, specifically relative to the agricultural component. So what I did is I presented Bremen and Carrollton, they call it ER3. And so that was one thought. Maybe we look at one of those to utilize as working with mayor and council, planning commission to come up with an ordinance that can be adopted, and then have a list of property owners that have signed something that says, I want to go to that, stay that, whatever you want to call it, so that we can, step one, present a, I'm going to call it, let's just call it agricultural zoning ordinance to go in the code. Step two would be, these property owners want to fall under that, get that accepted, and then part three would be adopt the map that would be showing it. So what I want to look at is, I want to go back and find the rural development code, and if I can't find Temples, I feel strongly that it probably closely matches Billerica's. But I'm going to try to find what the original RD, you know, which was probably in the 90s sometime when it rolled out, code said. Because whether we use that, whether we use one of these ERs, whatever we modify, the discussion is that the intent is that, for instance, with Lester's property, the way he operates today, he is allowed to operate in the future. If we put the restriction that's in one of those codes, let's say, that says no building or stable within 100 feet of that property line, he can't go add one in conflict with that. But if he had one at 50, he can still use it. But if he knocked that one down or burned down, you know, we got to, you know, then he would technically have to move it out of that. Okay. But what I mentioned to them, I was like, to me, the intent is not to be restrictive too much, especially if it's existing. What you don't want is new. In other words, if you want new, you know, in other words, if somebody comes in and wants to zone from, let's just say, R1 to agricultural, we want to make sure they're meeting a certain standard. Now, it's up to the city to figure out what that standard is. But I want to be clear in it that if it's operating, in other words, and then I come and buy Mr. Harmon, I have the same rights he has. Because that's what I'm buying, right?
Yes.
So that is the intent of where I want to get us to with that code. One of the examples I gave was Billerica. They changed their zoning downtown about 10 years ago, and basically a record service they were making where he couldn't sell his business because they weren't going to allow a record service in downtown, even though this guy had built his life on it. Now they changed it, but it took some fighting. You know, that's not the intent, and that was what was about this group. So that's kind of my thoughts. I think we're going to take a big step back, try to get an ordinance first, still working through the maps, but really try to get an ordinance that is agreeable, figure out which properties are going to that, get them to sign some type of document, so that we can go ordinance adoption, classification, rezoning of these properties, and a map. That's kind of how I see it. Don't ask me when. But that's where I'm trying to head. I know they're about to head into budget season, but my hope is that, what is the end of September? I would hope that no later than mid-November, we'd be ready to present an ordinance, you know, getting close to a final ordinance that both groups can agree upon. And that may be just as easy to go back to the RD, you know, and just say, let's start here, let's get it on the books, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought process too, because it's so much easier to move a piece of property up this chain to towards R1 from agricultural or something like that than it is to move it down. When you're moving that zoning down, typically whoever's doing that zoning, city council, whatever, needs to take a really hard look at it, because then you wind up with arguments from other people like the spot zoning, things like that. It's always something you want to exist. But it's just about always easier to move these properties up the chain than it is to move them down the chain, especially as the city grows.
And that's one of the things that we even talk about, just to put it in perspective, where we're talking about future land use. Maybe we got to be a little careful. Maybe we don't just call everything that we see as commercial as general commercial. Maybe we err to the neighborhood commercial side or limited commercial, you know, to try to give us some negotiation power. I told you I was going to finish before 2 hours.
I got a question. Like on Rocky Road where I'm between G6 and Carroll Wheelback, commercial,
Did
Just
I not
say
change
I'm
that?
gonna go in there, and I wanna build me a house, and I don't wanna rezone. And then they come in and do the commercial development. Am I gonna be good there? Or put another mobile home on that piece of property?
Yeah, bear with me, I wanna make sure.
That's on that view.
Thank you. Did I at least get the colors right this time? I haven't checked these guys, like I say, I got them in the email earlier, and, okay, she did, or he did. Yeah, so your residential, you are not restricted. In other words, you don't have buffers, he has buffers against you.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
And then as far as mobile home manufacturing, I don't remember the code exactly. I know there's some rules, whether or not they can bring new ones in, they have to be a certain age and so forth. Like, you know,
Well, I was talking about, you know, when I got, I remodeled this in the 70s model.
yeah,
But, you know, it was there when I bought it in 97.
right.
It's
Yeah.
been there since 72.
But as the residential property, you are not the one that is required to have the buffers and setbacks and so forth. You have setbacks on, let me rephrase that, you don't have the restricted ones. Yours is gonna be probably 50-foot front, 25 back, 15 sides. Where theirs against you, they should technically have about a 50-foot setback with about a 30-foot.
And the water that runs off the pond there, as far as the water that comes down.
In the back.
In the back. Yeah.
I want to ask, so are you having problems with
Well,
that?
it's pretty nasty back there. Needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah,
You got tires in that pond, you got car parts in that pond.
yeah,
It's really not being kept up a bit.
yeah. I'm gonna go way down there.
It goes
No, not the retention pond, the actual pond, behind the retention pond.
Are you talking about back behind Ingles?
Right.
Gotcha, that old one, because it's breached, is it not? Does it hold water all the time?
Yes.
Okay. I thought you were going somewhere else, so I got you.
They need to fix that. It's a big old deep hole back there too.
Well,
It's real bad.
I will tell you this, and me and the mayor's had this conversation. Temple has been hit with an unfunded mandate, and that is to, MS4, it's a federal law, Clean Water Act, to start addressing those things. Not really addressing that, but inspecting and doing stream walks, in other words. That's private property, so the city wouldn't actually go in there and do anything, but they might start writing letters, getting lawyers involved, and all those things. So, we're not there yet, but we're trying to move in that direction slowly but sure. It's a funding issue, and it's a big number to do it the way the federal government wants to do it. And we're just trying to hold on as long as we
I've
can.
seen some mattresses back there in that pond and just about everything, so. And I know that goes down through our drinking water, you know.
Can I ask one more question?
Mhm.
If you have the tax office on 113, if they decide, you know, it's in a house, if they decide they want to move it back to a resident, they have to go through a whole process, or they just, I know Baxter did,
Yeah, if they are operating under a special land use, I think they can just sign a piece of paper that says, we remove our special land use. And
Okay.
so sometimes in-home businesses, municipalities will say, we're not gonna change your residential zoning, we're just gonna give you a special land
well,
use.
what if it's zoned?
If it's zoned, then they have to
They have to come
rezone.
through a whole, okay.
That is, here again, that's really
I
a
know
law
there was a big
question.
thing about Baxter, I was just wondering if that applied, if that was because it was on a highway, or if it's just because it was zoned, what else, office, commercial, whatever.
I'm not a lawyer, but it's
Yeah.
my opinion that they have to go through the process.
Okay, all right, thank
That's
you.
my understanding.
Yeah, I was just wondering,
All right, I'll get out of that rabbit hole.
thank you.
Everybody good? Mr. Randy, I think I'm done.
Thank you, Howard.
I'll try to.
Well, our business, order of business will continue to consider a recommendation for the current zoning map, where you've already busted that bubble, Howard. Now go ahead and let Mr. Bill go ahead and talk about development and keep running this,
be just a very short report that your joint meeting a few days ago with City Council, as you know, we did not have any discussion on that because we'd spent all the time on the current zoning map. And I think, especially with what Howard has presented to you tonight, and trying to get that taken care of, my feeling is that we need to go ahead and deal with wrapping up work on the current zoning map before we start working on having more discussion on the future land use map. So I'd say we just put that on the back burner until we get through with what we're working on now, and then pick up on it at that time with the joint meeting of Planning Commission and the City Council. That may be late this year, or whatever, we get through what we're working on. That'd be my recommendation.
Does anybody have any other business? Can I hear a motion to adjourn? You've heard a motion duly seconded. We adjourn this meeting. Any further discussion? All in favor? So we are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry.
Any idea about next week?
They were gonna have it before the council meeting, but they're not now. He's gonna come, he said he wasn't gonna do anything like that. The council
Oh, we're
meeting.
almost there. Howard, any idea when the next meeting over there is?
I need to find out when I got time. You know,
If y'all need, I'll give you a call for something I do help, I will.
I need to get something that I can and be able to I do that, and then I'm not sure if I want to stay, but I think it gets to the side door. At least establishes that marker.
I'll be glad to help you with that.
Thanks, sir. Sorry.
No, you're fine.